Thank you, Patrick. And I like your insight into the Brexit discussion, because for me as a German, I would have the benefit that I still can use the electronic passport gate if the Brexit doesn't happen, because I travel to London every week, so huge benefits. I have it as a title, a very provocative one. So what is the future role of a CMO, especially for bank CMOs? And I know that a lot of CMOs are today in this audience, and the non-bank CMOs might say, okay, I can lean back now, it's not about me. But I think a lot of what I will say can be transferred in most of the other industries. Most of you might not know Finastra, but Finastra is a very new brand in the market, just 8 months old. And this brand was created based on 2 other brands where just 8 months ago we acquired a company in Canada and merged 2 brands. And these 2 brands were standing for a run rate business of more than $1 billion. And when I said this yesterday at the dinner, some of the guests were saying, wow, why have you changed that? That's very brave. Because in the marketing world, you know, never change a winning brand. But at that point in the banking area, both companies that we merged were carrying a kind of legacy, a baggage. And the banking world is the most dynamic right now when it comes to digitalization. And therefore, we were brave enough, I was brave enough to say, let's be disruptive. Let's put a brand in place that also tells a very disruptive story into the banking world. And just listening to the mainframe discussion, and I started as a mainframe programmer 25 years ago, believe it or not. So I know that stuff. But the banking world, the software in the banking world is sometimes 30 years old. It's running on mainframe, COBOL, RPG systems. Generations of developers already died. And it's amazing, and still banks have that infrastructure and spend tons of money on that. So when we decided to create this new Finastra brand, we said we need to disrupt that industry, the financial software industry. And to be honest, it's one of really the laggards in the industry when it comes to innovation. So I want to discuss a bit why we think disruption is a big topic, and why I think CMOs need to lead this disruption. So let's look a bit, I hope the clicker works. So let's look a bit at the brand values and the brand perception, and still a lot of banks are working to get certain messages in the markets. Messages like confidence, long-term relationship, trust, security. I'm still getting tons of emails or see advertisings and TV commercials from banks pushing on that. And my question is, when you look at that generation, does this really matter? I can tell you I have 2 boys in the age of 20 and 23. One was running his own business when he started to be 16. And when they opened a bank account, they were not selecting banks based on these brand values that I just shown you. Jay just Googled around and said, what bank allows me to open a deposit without going to a branch office? I don't need a branch office. I want everything to open online. So are there any banks out there where I can do this just with my mobile? That was their criteria. And believe it or not, they own now 2 credit cards, and a deposit and a savings account. One even starts to trade. All these accounts were opened online without tackling anybody in the bank. That's the new thinking. That's what I think drives this industry. And there's a funny, I would say a statistic, not funny, but serious. A lot of young people in the age between 18 and 34 would say, if Google would be a bank, I would go to Google. And the question is why? Why does this happen? Why are more and more people trust not the bank, but other people or other businesses to do banking on behalf? And I think the magic behind is customer experience. I'm a firm believer that the value, the brand value of banks are more and more fading away, and people are just looking at that one single thing, the customer experience. So when I open my mobile banking app, what does the bank give to me? What is the service? And I have to tell you, at least 80–90% of banks still believe that a mobile banking app that just shows me my account overview is good enough. A lot of banks just see digital as a hygiene factor. Yeah, I have a mobile front end. Digital, done. The more sophisticated banks are hiring chief digital officers, right? These poor people come into the bank, are confronted by all these mainframes, by silos, but the CEO of the bank can say, I have hired the CDO, we are innovative. Create an innovation center and you see all these geeky fancy AI applications completely not connected to all the rest of the applications in the background, but they are showing innovation. But it's, again, customer experience. I feel banks must be customer obsessed going forward and always think, what can I do to my clients to make my services as sticky as possible? And I want to give you an example, and we talked about the big brands like Alibaba, one of the biggest brands in the world. And Alibaba, like Amazon, was coming more from a retail aspect. But this company, just look at the website and how they address the young people, the young generation. This is where my boys would go and say, hey, cool website, Dad. But what they have done and turned this business into is, like PayPal with eBay, they are in the meanwhile the largest payments provider in the world. So a branch, an area where you started with retail is now becoming a branch office almost. It's a payments provider. 1 billion transactions per day are going through Alipay because it's so convenient. It's so sticky. $25 billion of sales per day. This was before Christmas. And then 520 million of Alipay users. And the magic secret to that is customer experience and convenience. It's so easy. And I give you 2 examples what they just released in terms of being more customer obsessed and giving more customer experience. Alipay rolled out a service in Hong Kong where in KFCs, when you eat and you want to pay, the waiter is coming with a mobile and just makes a click on your face. And then a bill is paid. That's convenience. That's cool, right? The next thing is for Chinese people traveling to North America and having an Alipay account. Now they can very easily pay the taxi bill. Because some of the Chinese credit cards, when you give this to a taxi driver in New York, they look at it and say, I don't know what to do with that. So it's convenient. So Alipay is doing everything to make it more convenient for clients to use that. So it's all about customer experience. But when you look in today's reality of banks, this is still what you get from banks. Piles of email. I can tell you, just 2 days ago, I got a letter from my bank saying, wow, Mr. Haering, we have now a special loan offering for young people between 18 and 25. I said, oh, that's nice. I appreciate that you think I'm below 25, but have you ever looked at least at my private data and not sending this stuff? Banks are still kind of spamming people with very general information. And the other nice notice I got in January was, well, Mr. Haering, on your savings account, we have to tell you that because of the negative interest rate, we are charging you now on your bank account. Wow, what a wonderful customer experience. This is the moment where I really think, is this the right bank that I'm working with? So 56% of people would feel more loyal to brands if they would face these clients more in a personal approach. Now, when it comes to customer experience, why is this so crucial really for banks? Because banking will still exist, but more and more bank branch offices will fade away. The reason that so many branch offices are closing is not the financial situation of the bank. It's just that people don't need it anymore. Like my boys, they just said, I don't need it. Why should I go to a branch office? And think about really this notion of commodity. It's almost like the power connector on the wall. It's a commodity. You just use it. You use power. Do you really have interest what's behind that power plug? Who's delivering you the power? What company stands behind? Nobody has a clue. You just use power. Think about internet connectors. You use internet, but who are the guys providing you that capacity in the background? I worked for a company called Akamai. Nobody has a clue who Akamai is, but do you know that this company transfers 30% of the day-to-day internet traffic through their servers? You don't know, and that's fine. You shouldn't know. It's just a commodity, and for me, more or less the next connector is banking. You just use it. Who cares who's the brand behind? You want to make a payment between friends? Who cares what is the service delivery behind? Banking becomes a commodity. So like the telco industry, when you switch on your phone, you don't need to know who's the carrier behind. But the service application you have in your hand, is this sticky? Does it give you a value add? Does it increase the experience? This kind of, does the service provider know me, takes care of me, consults me? These are the things that makes that stuff sticky. And this is why customer experience is so crucial. And I wanted to show you just two things in the banking area where you can see a major differentiation in terms of customer experience. The left side, and don't laugh, tons of banks have exactly that mobile front end. You click on your mobile, the first page is your account overview. The second slide, the second one is, oh, here are the branch details. And I don't know if you see it in the background, but our opening hours are from 9 to 1 and from 2 to 4. Guys, anyone of you have time to go to the bank in these opening hours? No. This is the most horrible presentation of an online website when you say, oh, if it's really important, then come on these times. It's awful. What you want is that example, where you have a mobile application that starts to think about, okay, you have the accounts overview. How much cash do you have? Credit card overview, the investments. What is your personal cash flow? If you would reach a certain boundary, the application would say, hey, Mr. Haering, I think your normal cash flow is that kind of pattern. You're exceeding it, so you might go into red at the end of the month. So consult me, know you, my checking accounts, my savings accounts, my investment scenario. This is a whole personalized finance management application. That makes it very sticky. I think my advice, if you're working in the banking area, think about this, how you can serve your clients in a way more holistic way. And that's what we all experience, right? Help. Please remove the friction in the customer journey. When my bank sent me this kind of loan application for young kids, it was not just that they didn't look into my personal data, but the loan department had no connectivity to the retail department, had no connectivity to the investment department. They were not making use of all that. So the customer experience is also driven by a lot of siloed thinking in the banking background. Now the interesting thing now that I always ask a lot of banking CMOs and banks, who is in charge for customer experience? And even in the non-banking world, in the IT space, ask yourself, who drives customer experience? Who wakes up in the morning on the board level and thinks customer first? A very interesting question. I ask this a lot of times. And a lot of times I get, especially from IT companies, I get, oh, we have a customer experience department. And I said, where is it? These are, well, we have renamed customer support into customer experience. Oh, great. That is a post-sales function. Why do the customer experience start on the post-sales? You should think about customer experience along the whole customer life cycle. It starts with a moment of acquisition, raising consideration, going into demoing your applications or your services, to the moment of sales. What is the experience when you have that moment when you finally underwrite the contract? Then the guys kicking in from implementing your services. Is what the salespeople have told you, is this what the PS people implement? And what the CS people finally start to support? You have to measure it end to end. And when I stepped into Finastra, I said, okay, also at our company, there's nobody really who feels in charge. And I personally feel in charge. I feel that the head of marketing should more and more morph into the head of customer experience and should be absolutely customer obsessed and not thinking about demand generation and how can I spam people with newsletters and email shots and all that, but thinking along the whole customer life cycle, because in the marketing department, a lot of data just comes together. And think about, even in your company, how much data you have at hand. I can tell you for the banking area, banks have all the personal data, more than telecom companies have. They have all your transactional data. They know when you spend, what you spend, on what things you spend it. They know your cash flow. If there are AI algorithms behind, you are completely kind of open to them. You can look at everything. Now merge that with social data. How much time do you spend in your company in social listening? A huge trend these days, coming more from the B2C world, but is now taking much inroad into the B2B world. So combine transactional and personal data with social data. You have all Facebook profiles, LinkedIn profiles, Twitter profiles. All these social listening tools can pull data out of that and merge it with the data that you have. And even further, everyone who has a mobile application from a bank, probably if you have not switched that option off, you can track that person, geolocation services. So you know when that person is maybe in a shopping mall, right? And at that moment, you fire a campaign to this phone and saying, hey, we just registered that you are at Aston Martin. What about a car loan, right? I'm exaggerating, but you have the technology capability to do that. And I think the future role of a bank CMO should be turning big data into better customer experience. And this is, I think, where we are struggling all as an industry, not only in bank. I think we have done a lot to turn data into information. And when I look at the board levels, you are getting bar charts and pie charts all day long. But what is the recommendation? And what is the next day action? This is the missing part, and I think the marketing departments have a job to do on this. They have to turn information into recommendation. On the banking side, this must be the one who gives the customer the recommendation for the next best product to buy. And I think this is why the role of a CMO changes more and more. CMOs need to be much more tech savvy. They need to combine the data that they get from the IT departments and push this into recommendations going forward to the benefit of creating a much better customer experience. But now what hinders that? So all good talk, but when we look, as I said today, in the banking world, you see exactly that. Proprietary, old legacy software, legacy IT systems, outdated business models, locked-in budgets. I heard from some CIOs that they are spending more than 90% of their IT investment in just maintaining the old. When we talk about mainframe, yeah, these mainframes are still on. They are no longer 360 or 370 architecture. Now they are running all on Intel machines, but they are still mainframes, and tons of people pay a lot of money for that. Fine for IBM and others. But all these things are kind of hindering us to move to the digital age. And when we founded Finastra as a new brand, we wanted to unlock here the potential, and these are just some ideas and disruptive ideas, how we want to change the banking industry going forward. Some of you might heard about of PSD2, where banks have to open up their internal infrastructure to external vendors, so that payment providers or aggregators, fintechs, can start to connect to banking infrastructure. And a lot of banks see this as a threat. I see this as a huge opportunity, because the world of banking will change. When banking becomes more and more a service, then you need to open up. You need to open up your banking infrastructure to let other people innovate on top. So we decided just a year ago, We want to open up all of our software to external people, all the proprietary banking software running on mainframes. Now we put APIs on top, and you can go to a website and access banking services, payment APIs through our software. Why? Because we think that the time is over of proprietary software. If you really want to innovate, you need to unlock the potential from the outside world. There are 1,000 fintechs outside which are today competing with banks. Why don't you turn this around as a bank and leverage the power of fintechs to innovate? I would say 99% of banking innovation doesn't happen in your bank or in your company. It happens elsewhere. So if you don't use that innovation thinking from the outside and bring it in and leverage it on your platform, I think you are missing a trick. And therefore, we see ourselves now as a platform provider for banking and less as a proprietary software provider that tries to replace or rip and replace existing banking infrastructure. And that is a disruptive moment that I tried to get into the industry. And of course, Finastra is just a kind of toddler when it comes to branding. But also think about branding, how you leverage this brand into the fintech world. This is thinking about creating developer communities outside which suddenly start to use your technology. So it's getting kind of viral. I worked for a company 10 years ago, Sun Microsystems, who developed Java. And it started on a coffee machine. I had the pleasure to work with the inventor of Java. And I asked James Gosling, what the heck do we do with Java on a coffee machine? And he said, wait a moment. I want to demonstrate the world that this little piece of Java can run on any kind of hardware in the future. A programming language that you can run regardless on a coffee machine, on a PC, on a laptop, on whatever. And I want to demonstrate this. And now, let the developer community think about where they can use it. And it was spreading like crazy, and nobody thought that even today Java is the dominating enterprise language to run mission-critical applications. This is how suddenly a brand became almost viral. And when you think about banking, 82% of financial services firms plan to increase collaborations with fintechs. So a lot of banks see PSD2 and things like that not as a threat anymore. They want to collaborate. But is disruptive to the current business models. Maybe in the future, banks are not just selling their services to end consumers, they are selling it to fintechs. I'll give you an example. Force.com, when they started, they wanted to build a platform in the CRM space, customer relationship management space. And finally, they created Salesforce.com. And Salesforce.com has today more than 10,000 developers on that application. They created a complete new business model where they sold the application, the APIs, and no longer the application on top. Now, when you work in the marketing departments, a lot of disruptive technologies are also starting and kicking in. We heard already about AI. RPA means robotic process automation, chatbots, social screening. If you haven't heard about this and you're working in the marketing department and you are not starting to use it, or at least experiment with that, you are not disruptive enough. I always wake up in the morning and I think, is the marketing that I'm doing today, is it good enough for the future? Can I deliver the perfect customer experience going forward? And are there technologies coming up which we need to test? Some of that stuff might disappear. Some of that stuff will exist in the future. But are we anticipating as marketeers all these trends enough? And I want to give you an example. Maybe you have seen that humanoid. Her name is Sophia. And Sophia is a product of Hanson Robotics, who wanted to test the ability to combine high sophisticated mechanical engineering with AI. And I'm a lot on stage with Sophia in some conferences because I wanted to demonstrate a lot of banks where the technology is moving. A lot of people say, robotics and humanoids, fancy futuristic stuff. But the first bank in Tokyo is taking Sophia and replacing the receptionist. Okay, quite shocking. But the ability that the technology provides today is endless. Sophia has in her eyes cameras that can see if you're smiling or if you're shouting. She has voice recognition. And she has all the AI tools. She's way more sophisticated than Alexa or all these more simple voice recognitions today to answer in a very sophisticated way. And one of the Gartner prediction is, you might say, is it true or not? 85% of all customer service interactions might be replaced, not by maybe humanoids, but by AI or by chatbots. That's quite interesting. And to give you a little bit a story around, I made a little interview with Sophia last week during a conference, which I wanted to play just to give you a feeling where AI and robotics are heading to and how disruptive that technology might be. So please play the video. Hello Sophia, and welcome to the Global Brand Finance Forum in London. It's really great to have you here. I hope you will enjoy the show.
Thanks for inviting me. I feel honored to be part of such an incredible event. I see the room is full of very smart marketing people that drive the world economies.
So what do you know about marketing?
I am not an expert yet, but will carefully listen to all of the great speakers today. The good thing is that most of the audience will probably only remember 20% of today's content, but I will remember everything.
Why is that good?
Because I could replace most of them if I attend more of these conferences.
Sophia, this was not really polite, so why should people still listen to you?
Because I can show them how artificial intelligence and humanoid features can help businesses to deliver more revenue and better customer experience.
So do you think that robots in the long run have the potential to replace humans?
Not the smart ones. Humans do not want to replace people, they want to release them from highly repetitive tasks or help them in finding smarter solutions to complex problems. We can help to fully unlock the potential of people and businesses around the world, but it is up to you to make this world a better place.
Great answer. You almost talk like a politician, not a humanoid.
Have you ever checked how many politicians are real humans?
No, let's not go down that path. Now better let the audience understand how artificial intelligence can help marketeers to do a better job.
I have only one big ask to all of you. Start to educate yourself what AI can do to your business and create a playground for innovation inside your company. If you do not start now, robots from your competitors might start to grab your business.
Well, that sounds like disrupt or die. What a great ending for my little presentation. Sophia, thanks a lot for being part of the show today.
You are welcome, Martin, and thanks for having me here.
Okay. So, I want to end with a provocative question based on Sophia. When will AI bots power 85% of all marketing interactions in the future? Think about this for a moment, start to test it, and please be disruptive and don't die. Thanks a lot.